Tōku reo, tōku ohoho, tōku reo, tōku māpihi mauria, tōku reo, tōku whakakai mārihi, ake. Ko te reo Māori e ngunguru nei. Welcome to Mata with me, Mihingarangi Forbes, brought to you by Te Māngai Pāho and Irirangi Te Motu, New Zealand on Air. Later in the show, we discuss the upcoming Treaty Principles Bill with the Taxpayer Union's Executive Director, Jordan Willliams, and find out why the TPU is staying out of the debate. Engari, hei huakerangi, ka toru atu ki Rotorua. Over the weekend, reo advocate and educator Rawiri Wright shared a transformative experience with his two sons, Kiriama and Manawa. The three received their mataora, their facial tattoo, at Rūnanga marae in Rotorua. The pursuit of te reo Māori has been a form of activism for Rawiri and his whānau, and reviving mataora is another expression of that activism. Their mokopapa was held on the 42nd anniversary of the Māori language petition being delivered to Parliament and on the eve of Te Wiki o te reo Māori. Rawiri is also the co-chair of Te Rūnanga Nui o ngā Kura Kaupapa Māori, who in 2023 submitted an urgent Waitangi Tribunal claim on behalf of 62 Kura Kaupapa Māori around the country. Nō reira, hei matapaki I ōna whiako, hei whakaora, hei tiaki I te reo, ko hono mai a Rawiri I Rotorua. Tēnā koe e te rangatira.
Mihingarangi tēnā koe o tira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Ka rima te koutou te wiki o te reo Māori a te rātou. Miharo, koro nei ngā kaitiaki o te reo e pakanga kia whai mana tō tātou reo I ngā wā, I ngā wāhi katoa. Ki tō tirohanga, kei te ōrāke te reo?
Ōrāke te reo. Nama nei, rahi ake ngā tāngata e kororo Māori ana I nei rā, ki era ko kita I te hitori o tēnei whenua, nama nei. Hoia no, ko tāku e wanga tonu ana, ko te ōrau o ngai tātou, te iwi Māori e kororo Māori ana, kaore I te kaha tipu. So, numerically, there are probably more people speaking Māori now than there have ever been. But the proportion of Māori speakers of te reo Māori as a percentage of the total population of Māori is actually declining, continuing to decline. So that's a concern for me.
What do you put that down to, Rawiri?
Oh, well, number one is that our birth rate has taken off again. So we're close to 1 million people now. But the proportion of us, and if you take that, say that, 24% of us are speakers of Māori to one degree or another, that means that there are just under 250,000 Māori who speak Māori. Now, that's more Māori who have ever spoken Māori, if we look back in history. Then you add to those the non-Māori who are speakers of Māori, and, that paints another picture. But it talks to me about the ongoing dislocation of the majority of Māori from Te Ao Māori. And that's why we do what we do.
We have a new Minister of Education, and much of your work has been in the area of mātauranga Māori, but of course, many of our tamariki are not in Māori education, they're in mainstream. Have you had any dealings with Erica Stanford? What are your views on the approach of this government for tamariki Māori?
We've had a number of hui with the Minister, and we do believe that her heart is in the right place. She knows, like we know, that the negative statistics relating to Māori underperformance come from the mainstream system. Ngā kura au noa. Those statistics do not relate to kaupapa Māori education stream, such as kura kaupapa Māori aho matua and kura āiwi. So there is certainly a job to be done on that side of the fence. What we have encouraged the Minister to allow us to do is to continue to develop a parallel pathway, Kaupapa Māori, Kurahi Mātauranga. And to her credit, she is open to that. So we are continuing to pursue that and to continue to talk amongst ourselves, te matakahuki being pohanga reo, kura kaupapa Māori, kura a iwi, and the wānanga Māori, as to how we can bolster and show the minister, show the world what that might look like.
Yeah, because that's kind of what the Waitangi Tribunal claim that you took was, is that the Crown at the time was failing, always is failing to adequately engage and consult with kura kaupapa Māori, but you're talking about a potential system that, or framework that looks like kura kaupapa Māori runs alongside the mainstream program. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. Because we believe that what we are advocating for would be the epitome of Tiriti o Waitangi response to education provision in this country. Those who want to can pursue a total education in Māori from preschool to tertiary, and those who don't want to can continue with what we call it kura aunua, with the kura kaupapa Pākehā, if you like, and they can continue in that stream, but allow us to continue to develop this stream for the growing number of people who want it for themselves, their tamariki and their mokopuna.
Te reo is about accessibility, and I wonder, do you have concerns about how accessible our puna and our kohanga and our kura are to whānau?
Well, that's part of the ongoing discussion, because over the years, once the Ministry of Education, got its hands on kohanga reo, there was a drastic reduction in the number of kohanga reo around the country, and at the moment it's beginning to grow again. That was part of our claim to the Waitangi Tribunal, was it because of the Ministry's lack of provision of legislation and regulations to actively support and protect the growth of kura kaupapa Māori aho matua. Our growth was deliberately stunted over the years, and if the minister agrees with what we are saying, there will be a much more definitive growth plan put in place, which will allow more people to access this education option.
Tēnā koe. At the weekend, Matua, you and your two sons, Kiriama and Manawa, received your mata ora. Took place at Ruamata. Looks incredible. It's all over social media. Pēhe tērā whiako ki a koe?
He miho. He noho whakaiti ana mo te ahotanga I puta I kite I tō mātau marae o Ruamata, o Huele ko Kopako, I te mutunga Wiki. We're deeply humbled and privileged by what happened. Yeah, we had planned for it, absolutely. But, for the experience that it became, we sort of hoped that it might be something like that, but it was a hugely uplifting experience for everybody who was involved, because, like reo, we believe that Tāmoko is a tauranga atete, a site of resistance. Tikanga, reo, mātauranga, kohanga reo, kura kaupapa Māori aho matua, ngā wānanga, mataora. They are all tauranga atete. They are all sites of resistance. They are all paths to the embodiment of tino rangatiratanga and mana Māori motuhake. I Tāmoko here te ārero, our tongues were carved in order to be Māori speakers, and it was sort of natural that we should take the next step and say to the world, well, here is a demonstration of our commitment to what we believe in. We say, me pono te tangata ki tāna e whakapono ai. Be true to what you believe in. We believe in these things. We believe in wairua Māori, ngākau Māori. And so what better way to demonstrate that than to take it to the next step, and here we are.
Aye. How does it feel to see your sons with matora?
Oh, humbling, e poho kereru ana, very, very proud, because it was the woman who laid the path, who laid down the challenge for us, if you like. My baby sister Taorangi, she was the first to get the moko kauai after it was her great-grandmother who last wore the moko in their family. It was my great-grandmother who was the last to wear the moko kauai in my family. And so after Taorangi was Renee, and then our three girls, Harina, Tumihiroa, Te Ngāwari. So the woman, had, once again, ko te mana wahine, wera wahine toa, I whakāturi o mai I para te huarahi. And so we've been a bit slow to the party, but nei ko ngā tāne e whai ake nei tērā tauira.
Tēnā pia. Perhaps you were waiting for the theme of this wiki o te reo Māori, which is ake, mo ake. What does that phrase mean to you?
Well, just to recap on that, you like you said in your intro, Saturday, the 14th of September, coincides with the presentation of Te Petihana mo te reo Māori on the steps of Parliament in 1972, absolutely. And it was that petition that initiated almost everything else that has happened in relation to the revitalisation and the development of te reo Māori, ngā reira e tikāne. Secondly, 14th of September 2023 we lost a grandchild to the health system. So we also carried her memory. It was also about underscoring the release of the Waitangi Tribunal document with regard to Kura Kaupapa Māori aho matu, and saying, well, there's a full stop there, but it's a new page. There are new challenges in front of us. And it was also about saying, ko te reo Māori e hoa mā, ko te reo Māori, he taonga tuku iho, he mō tika, ahurea.
Tēnā koe.
There's a treasure to be passed down, and it is a cultural right for us to speak Māori, ngā reira, kia kaha tātou. There it is, ake, forever.
Tēnā koe e te rangatira o tira e mihi ana ki tō whānau hoki.
Ka nui te me.
Ko Rawiri Wright, tērā. Now, last week I sat down with the Executive Director of the Taxpayer Union, Jordan Willliams, to discuss the ACT Party's upcoming Treaty Principles Bill and to give him an opportunity to share his views on a story we produced in 2023 that explored the issue of what happens when Indigenous rights are put to a popular vote. Kia tahuria ki tātou. Well, tēnā koe, Jordan. Thank you so much for making time available to us.
Kia ora.
Last year we produced a documentary called Trickle Treaty. It's about the failed Australian referendum called The Voice to Parliament. Had Australians voted yes, it would have meant the First Nations of Australia, who've been there for tens of thousands of years, could have been acknowledged in the country's constitution and had an independent voice in Parliament. Similar, I guess, to the Māori seats or Māori wards here. It failed, and Indigenous Australians still do not have an independent voice as First Nations people. So when the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese released the proposed wording for the Voice to Parliament referendum in August 2022, opinion polls showed there was 75% support. Within a year that had drastically changed, and some Indigenous Australians believe it wasn't helped by a campaign fronted by two high-profile Australians with links to conservative advocacy groups who ran the No campaign. Our story looked at what lessons might be learned from the Voice to Parliament if ACT's proposed treaty referendum was to proceed here. And when our story aired, as you know, you complained and you said we weren't specific enough in our approach. So, yeah, I guess we're here to be...
Yeah, that's a fair setting of the context. I think that, so first and foremost, I mean, we obviously have zero connections to the Australian, I was trying to think of
the Voice to Parliament?
Yeah, but the campaign was Advance Australia. So Advance Australia were the campaign group that the piece criticised. You alleged that there were links to the Atlas Network, and because the Taxpayers Union is a proud member of Atlas Network, that you sort of projected those views onto our organisation. And we were particularly upset. One, that's very unfair, because actually the link to the Atlas Network was because one of the spokespeople for the no vote sat on the board of a Centre for Independent Studies, quite a well-known, well-established, credible economic think tank based over in Sydney. But someone else on that same board was one of the leaders of the Yes campaign.
So today we're speaking to you as the head of TPU,
yes,
not the Atlas Group.
Well,
right?
That's what brought, of course, your story, that's what brought us in. So the first point I want to make is actually...
So the reason I'm here today is to offer you that opportunity where you said I wasn't specific enough at the beginning about your views, the TPU's views on the proposed principles referendum. So my question to you is, what is the position of the TPU?
Of course we didn't have a position. And I'm 99.9% sure that Atlas had no position on the Voice referendum. In fact, just the point I was making is that Atlas had the identical connection to both sides of the tent. Of course, that was one of our concerns with the documentary. It painted a very one-sided picture and then said we chose not to respond. Of course, we chose not to respond, and one of the complaints that was upheld for the breach of Radio New Zealand's editorial standards was that when we were approached, the producer said, we want to talk to you about X treaty principles bill. Yes. We said, well, look, I've reviewed the email this morning, said, look, it's not really in our wheelhouse. I don't think we'd have a view. And that's where it left. What you didn't say, of course, is that the primary premise of the piece was a criticism basically of think tanks and portrayed us, because of an alleged connection to the Australians, as being somehow anti-Indigenous rights.
You are entitled to your commentary and view of the documentary. The premise of the documentary was looking to Indigenous people in Australia of how their vote to Parliament had worked out and their concerns and warnings to Indigenous people in Aotearoa about the proposed Treaty Principles Bill. So my question to you, what is the position of the TPU on the Treaty Principles Bill?
Oh, well, same answer. We haven't had a position, and I doubt we would. You think about what our mission is, lower taxes, less waste, more accountability. And that democratic accountability, that is unfortunately means it starts to open up some of the co-governance stuff, which is really hard. It's certainly not why I set up the Taxpayers Union more than 10 years ago. But in terms of that's in relation to democratic accountability.
So you do have some views on some specifics of Te Tiriti because you run campaigns on anti-co-governance.
Well, I mean, look, the main one there would be in relation to Three Waters, and I'm very proud that actually on the messaging, I think we were pretty moderate. Our messaging in order was it would lead to higher water costs, stand by that, more bureaucracy, no local control, and yes, we said less democracy. That was the way we worded it for that campaign, and it was a hard one. In fact, we've been very open. It actually led to us changing our mission. It used to be lower taxes, less waste, more transparency. We changed it to accountability, because our business model is to change, hearts and minds and out there and get support.
So your business is to change hearts and minds.
Yes, of course. I mean,
and you say that you don't have
a
position on the Treaty Principles Bill. You ran a poll. You ran a poll a year ago, so you must have some position, or at least you're open to be holding the conversation, because we all know what comes from polls. You have news that comes from.
We run polls on, the Taxpayer Union Courier poll. In fact, I think we've got one coming out in a few days. This month, we've already got the politicians' staff is texting me, calling me, wanting to know the results. We don't have any position, for example, on political parties, which party you should vote for. But we still poll on it. I think that's a real public service and adds to, in the same way as TVNZ do plenty of polls on things that you don't have a view on.
they're broadcasters, you're a campaign company, that it might be the difference. Can I ask you, in terms of in terms of the Treaty Principles Bill, who's informing your opinion? Are you starting to develop some of those? Because you're going to lead some of the discussion and the narrative for the people that you represent. So I'm interested in who's informing you on the aspects of te tiriti.
We'll just come back. The board has, as I said in that original email a year ago, it's just not in our wheelhouse. If the government were to go and spend $1 billion on advertising on one side of the referendum or something like that, of course, because then it would be a spending issue. But I mean, fundamentally, of course, even among, I'm sure, and among even some of the leaders in the Taxpayers Unions probably have diverse views. Reasonable minds can differ on these issues, and because it's not core, it's not within our wheelhouse, I highly doubt the Taxpayers Union would.
But you hosted Lord Hannon, who came here and talked about te tiriti. So you are hosting, you are initiating discussions and debates.
Well, he wasn't,
is it even fair to say that you don't have a position when you invite Lord Hannon to talk about treaties?
Well, we're here to talk. We do defend, and we staunch defenders of democracy. And in the context of something like Three Waters, which is obviously all post-1840 assets, it's a little bit of a fudge to try to shove that into some sort of treaty overlay on it, and we rightly pointed that out. But we come at it from these are ratepayer assets, they're funded by our members and supporters, and so we should keep that democratic accountability and control. Lord Hannon actually wasn't here to do with the treaty. Lord Hannon was here because it was our 10-year party.
You must have known what he was coming for. Much of his conversation was about treaties, Indigenous treaties around. Did you invite any iwi leaders to that hui?
Well, he was the guest speaker. We had one guest speaker.
You're talking about democracy.
I mean, we did have.
And you represent all taxpayers. Did you invite any iwi leaders?
If you want to play that game, my current chair, my last chair, were both Māori, and that includes right through all when we first had to touch democracy issues.
I honestly don't think that those two individuals would say that they were treaty experts. They're not elected.
That wasn't the question you asked.
Well, because you're using them as people that you've invited to the hui. I'm asking you, did you invite any of the wider Māori community, iwi leaders, academics, treaty experts? Unless
they're members and supporters, it's not a question we ask our people, in terms of when you join, we don't ask, for example, your profession or whether you're an iwi leader. But just come back to the premise of this.
Campaigns and discussions that are central to the nationhood of Aotearoa, but it seems to be that you're running one view only.
You seem to be mistaken that we're really interested in the treaty or issues. Well, no, we're not, except for when it fits within our mission, which is that democratic accountability. And I mean, Lord Hannon, can I just be really clear on this? Lord Hannon we didn't invite him over to talk about the treaty. The reason we had Lord Hannon over, it was our 10-year event, one of the, frankly, I think a laundry list of mistakes in that earlier documentary was it said that I met Lord Hannon through the Atlas Network. Totally untrue. Absolutely bananas untrue.
We didn't say that, Jordan.
Yes, you did. I watched the video this morning.
We absolutely did not say
and
that.
It said, I can absolutely assure you, I did not meet Lord Hannon through the Atlas Network. I know because I met him it was the European.
That's great to know, but we didn't say you met Lord Hannon through the Atlas.
But you implied again, because your only link to the Australian referendum was through Atlas. That was the only link that made us relevant for the story. And what I'm telling you...
Not necessarily, because as a campaign organisation in Aotearoa who runs narratives often, like on Three Waters, like on anti-co-governance, you are powerful. You are all but powerful for the narrative of Aotearoa. So on something that's so important, like the founding document of Te Tiriti, that's why we are asking the question of you. Is what would that look like?
Well, I'm telling you,
what is the position on that? So are you saying that you won't be running any campaigns, you'll have nothing to do with the bill?
Well, I've just said, it's not in our wheelhouse.
So there will be absolutely no participation?
I can't see why the Taxpayers Union would fundraise for a campaign that's not about tax, spending, democratic accountability.
Just given that you've said you'll have nothing to do with it, I wonder what your thoughts are on what do you think the benefit for taxpayers will be if the Treaty Principles Bill is passed?
I've not really turned my mind to it. I think, again, reasonable minds can differ. One of the great things about think tanks or pressure groups is we can pick what fights we take on, and on things like, a great example would be, I'm a monarchist, my co-founder David Farrer is a staunch Republican. Do you know what? I just do not get emails from members and supporters when the Royals come to visit about the cost. Again, reasonable minds can differ on it. As an organisation, if someone if journalists came and asked, do you think that that this cost is reasonable? Cross that bridge when you come to it. You could make the arguments that the status quo is cheaper. Similarly, on something like treaty principles, it's very hard to challenge. Democracy has a cost, but unashamedly at the Taxpayers Union, we're Democrats.
Tēnā koe, Jordan. Thank you for your time. It's been interesting.
Ko Jordan Willliams tērā o te uniana kautu tāke. Tohia te tohe, kia mā horo ai tō tātou reo kā meha meha, te reo take o tēnei whenua tauri kura, arā ko te reo Māori. Hei reo wānanga, hei oranga hoki mō tātou, ake. Tēnei te whakaauti atu nei ki te Māngai Pāho, me irirangi te motu, nā rāua tēnei hōtaka I taunaki. We'll be back in a fortnight. Nohora mai.